Hi, welcome to this tutorial. So in this tutorial, we are going to be looking at declaring objects in JavaScript. So the complete guide to declaring objects in JavaScript. It's gonna include different ways, various ways to declare objects. I've left no stone unturned. So this is pretty much the only tutorial you would need on this particular subject. Alright then, so let's dive right into it then. Alright, so this is what I have so far. I have this file, this folder called JavaScript Practice that I use for most of my tutorials. I have this index.html right here with some basic syntax in here, and I've connected that to the script.js file. And if you look at the script.js file right here, you would notice that there's nothing in here, and this is what I would like to fill out. Alright, so as you know, objects are used to create a real world representation. Alright, they're used to create a real world representation in programs, and they have two parts. They have properties and they have values. So for instance, if we create a human object, so for example, human is an object, right? So if we have a human object right there, they have a lot of properties, like they could have eye color, they have hair color, they have height, they have weight, and each of these properties, they'll have their own values, and that's what makes each of the human beings different, right? So this is not just the list of properties. There are like 100 different properties, and each of these properties have their own unique set of values, and that makes each human being different, right? So for example, one person they'll have black eye, and the other one has a blue eye color but blonde hair, but the other person might have black eye color but red hair. It differs like that. And even if it's black or brown, the shade differs, and the height and weight obviously differs a lot, and the name differs, the way they talk differs, the way they walk. All of these are properties, all of these are attributes of that particular person and what they've achieved. All of these are attributes of the particular person, which makes them different from the other person. So this is what objects are. So there is this generic object with generic properties, but the values make each of the object different. So we're going to look now at the various ways of creating such objects. So to start with, well, just define it. Just go ahead and define it. So we are just going to create JavaScript objects by using object literals to start with. Alright, so the easiest method to create an object is by using an object literal. This is where you basically define the object and assign properties and values to them. So this method is similar to creating an array and assigning value to it. So let's look at how to do that. Let's look at the same example we've looked at before. So human being. But this is not the only object out there. There's car. Each car is different, has a different nameplate, it has a different license number, it has a different model. Okay, and even if a particular car, if you're looking at a car of a particular model, even then the color, the nameplate, the model, the year it was manufactured, the day it was manufactured, when it's due for servicing, all of that is going to differ for each car, right? So this is how you can have multiple objects. And let's just look at the human object which we were talking about before. So let human is equal to, as I told you, there are 100 different attributes, but I would like to just go with 4 or 5 to save some time. And let's look at some of them. So this is how you do this. So to define an object, you have to first define it as a variable, because if you want to change the values inside of it, you have to define it as a variable. If you're not changing it, you can make it a constant. That's up to you, but I've made it a variable. So let human is equal to open and close flower brackets like this, and within the flower brackets you can have what is called as property. Okay, and after a colon like this, you can give the value. So this is called the property value pairs like this, and you can have multiple property value pairs in here separated by comma. So I can make this eye color like this, and after a colon, since this is a string, I have to make this within quotes. And hair color would be, let's say, brown. Height would be, let's say, 180, yeah, it can be 180 centimeter. Name, let's say John, and you can close it off with a semicolon. So here you go. I've created an object, and I've given that particular object an eye color of blue, hair color of brown, height is 180 centimeters, and name is John. Okay, so this is how you can create an object. So literally this is how you create an object, and as you can notice, we just have one such object that we can create like this. If you want to create another human object, you'll have to go over it all over again. So now that we've created this, let's look at how to access the properties. So access properties. So how do you access your properties? By using your dot operator. So you have something called the dot operator in your object. So right now we have a full-blown object with the name and the properties and its values. So how do we access the properties of it? For example, let's say I want to access the value of the eye color of the human property. So how I do that is, so by using the dot operator. So let me just go ahead and go for a console.log in here, so I can log it to the console. It's much easier that way than using the DOM, because we're just looking at some examples right now, right? So here, let me open with a template string maybe, so we can learn template string. We can practice template string in the meantime as well. Alright, so eye color is, right, so there's a space. Now, what do I need to put inside of here for it to access my eye color? Well, I have to call human like this because that's the name of the property, dot eye color. So if I do it like this, that means that I'm asking to access the eye color of the human object. So if I save this right now and run this, you'll see what happens. Alright, so let me refresh. See, it says eye color is blue. It has properly accessed my eye color, and this can be done for any object and any property within that object. Alright. Okay, so what if I want to display more than one value at the same time? That can be done as well. So I'll just try to change this. For example, what I do is, we have a name here, right? So I'll just add that in here. So human.name has, see how easy template strings are? So human.name has human.eye color, blue eyes, okay? And maybe we can even include the hair, and human hair color, like this, which would be brown hair. Like this. So if I do it like this, then what happens? See, John has blue eyes and brown hair, which is exactly what we wanted. It was perfectly accessed dynamically because these are values that can change. Alright, so that's how you access the properties of an object and display their values. Now let's look at how to change the property values by using the dot operator. So if we've looked at accessing the properties, now changing property values. Again, that should be something that is possible, because if you can't change this, what's the use of this being dynamic, right? So again, I can use the dot operator to do the same. So for example, if I want to change the eye color of human, I would use the dot operator, call it, and just assign a new value to it. So for example, I've changed it from blue to green, and that's it. So now if you try to display this, right, you would notice that, eye colors, if I go for a console.log, and if I try to display the entire human object, let's see what happens. Right, see, we have all the properties in here. Eye color is now green and it's not blue. And you can use the dot operator to display the value just like we did before as well. And also, you can create a new property and add to it. It's very easy to do that. All you have to do is use again the dot operator, but this time create a new property. For example, let's say I'm creating weight like this, and assign a value to it, because you can't just create a property, you have to assign values to it. So you just assign a value to it. That's it. Now if you do a console.log of human, let's see if our weight property has been added or not. See, it has been added at the end. It always gets added at the end, any new property that is. So at the end, our weight has been added. So that's pretty much it for your object. But your objects don't just have your properties and values. They can also have what's called as a function, right? So you know how functions work in JavaScript, but actually you can add functions to your object as well. So what I'm going to do is, after my name like this, I'm going to add a last name. So I'm just going to make this F name and not just name. And I'm going to add a L name as well. So let's make this camel casing, so it's readable. So that's your first name, and then you can have a last name, and I'm going to have that as Smith, right? And then finally I want a full name. But to calculate the full name, I can get myself a function. So I can make this maybe an arrow function like this, an anonymous arrow function, and in here I can just return this. You have to use this in here because we are referring to properties that are, or I can just use the template string for this. Okay, just return this dot fname and give a space right here, and please add that to this dot l name like this, and close it off with a semicolon like this. So if you look at it like this, what you see in here is we've created a template string that basically concatenates the first name and the last name with a space in between. That works perfectly, right? And to calculate that right inside of our object after all of the properties, because that's the convention, we've added a method. Okay, we've given it a name just like we've done for all of the properties, but we've opened up an anonymous arrow function. This can be an anonymous normal function as well. It's all going to work the same. And in here, all we've done is just return the concatenation. You can add more lines of code in here if you'd like, but for our example, this is all we need, right? So do you see how the function was created, right? We are creating a method f full name and assigning a function to it. It's not a normal function, right? It's an anonymous function. But now that we've done all of this, how do we access this? Now that's the question, right? So how do we access this? Well, it's actually pretty similar. All you have to do in here is just go for human.fullname. Just call that. But instead of just calling full name, which you can't because it's inside of an object and it's not an independent function, so you can't just call it separately, you have to call it with the dot operator and with the name of the object in the front. Alright, so how do you do that? So human dot, so actually we'll have to place this inside of a console.log because we're just returning something and we are not logging that. So in order to look at it from our eyes, we have to log it properly. So in here, let's say human dot full name like this, and that's pretty much it. Alright, so if you look at the output right now, well, I'm getting an undefined. I guess your arrow functions don't work very well in here. Alright, we can just remove all of this and then separately just put it like this, and that would still work. So just use full name as a method instead of making it a property, and you can just call it as this. And if you look at the output right now, say you get John Smith, right? And we are using this in here because we are referring to the properties inside of this object, within this object. So if you can access them as human.fname, but since full name is inside of human already, we can just directly use this to refer to a property inside of this object. That's what it means. So that's how you create property methods. So property methods, we've looked at property methods so far. And next, let's look at accessing and adding properties by using the square brackets. So I'll just remove all of this. Accessing and adding properties using square brackets, because so far we've just been looking at the dot notation, and that's actually more than enough. It's a great way of doing things, but you can also use the square brackets just like you would with your arrays to do the same. So for example, let's open up a console.log, and instead of human of let's say name, human.name like this, I'll just say human of within quotes. It can be either double quotes or single quotes, but within quotes, human of name like this. Now if I go ahead and look at the output, sorry, it says undefined. It says undefined, and that's mainly because we don't really have a name. So we can just say fname like this, which is present right here. Alright, so if you look at this, say it says John. So that's how you can do it. You can also access properties using variables. For example, what you can do instead is, let's property is equal to name like this, and you can change the value that you put inside of it because you've given a generic name in here, and you can just say human of prop. This time you don't have to place it inside of quotes because it's going to directly access this, which is inside of quotes. So now if you look at the value, alright, so it's still undefined because I made the same mistake again. So I have to give fname like this. Say it says John. And you can change this to anything you want. For example, let's say I want to change it to eye color like this. And it's completely dynamic in such a way that, see, the property that you're accessing can easily be changed as well. Alright, and also you can use the square for adding new properties just like we did before. All you have to do is within your quotes, double or single quotes, add this property and in here put 200 lbs or something like that. And if you do a console.log of human right now, your weight should have been added. So if you see, there you go, your weight has been added. Perfect, right? So that's how you add and access properties by using your square brackets. I'm going to remove this again and we're going to be talking about deleting properties. So you can delete the properties from an object by using the delete keyword. For example, let's say in here I add the weight directly, but later on I decide that I don't really want that property in here. Okay, for some reason I decide I don't want this property. So what I can do now is, first of all, let me just do a console.log of human so you can see what's there to start with, and then I'll use the delete keyword to access human by either using the dot notation or by using the square brackets. It's all going to be the same. I'm going to just delete the weight property inside of human, and if I do a console.log of human again, let's see what happens. Alright, so actually using this is useless because it's already going to get deleted. So if I go ahead and delete the weight, and if you look at the output right now, you'll see that the weight is nowhere to be found because it has been deleted by using the delete keyword, right? Alright, so that's a lot of things. We've looked at a lot right now. So far we've just used the object literal to create your objects, but that's just one way of doing it. You can actually do it in another way as well. For example, what you can do is you can use the new keyword, okay, and the object constructor to do the same. So it's as simple as specifying the new keyword followed by the object constructor. Okay, this would create a new but an empty, that is undefined object for you to play with. So let's use human again, but in here you just have to place it like this. Right, new object. The object is a keyword. The object refers to the global object. It refers to the global object, and new refers to the new keyword. Okay, creating something new. So human.eye is equal to blue. Human.hair is equal to brown. Human.height is equal to. So you can just use the dot notation just like we did before, or the square brackets, and you can add the properties that you want to it like this. It's as simple as that. Instead of using the object literal, you can just create the properties of the object from scratch. Alright, so now that you've done this, what you can do is you can do a console.log and human like this. So that's how you use the object constructor to create objects and then properties within them. So isn't it similar to the object literal method though? It is actually similar, just like with object literals, you can create methods inside of here as well. Let me show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this with lname and fname again. So go ahead and create an fname for a last name. Sorry, this would be my first name and this would be last name like this. Okay, I'll create all of this. And so far, if we go for a console.log of human, we have all of the things that we need. It's all well and good. Alright, so we have our first name, we have our last name, we have all of that. Alright, and next what we can do is we can add a method just like we'd add a property. So full name like this, we can just add it. Similarly, just like you would do in your normal function, I mean in your object literal, you can just do that. I'll create a template string and there you go. So do you see how we use human.fname and human.lname in here, and we're returning it so we can get the full name. Now to access this, all we need to do is do a console.log of it and just access it. That's it. So I can actually make it interesting. So human.fname So John's full name is human dot full name, like this, call it, and that's pretty much it. So if you go and look at the output, let's see if we are getting it right now. See, John's full name is John Smith, and in this case our arrow function is working because it was not inside of a template, it was not inside of an object literal, and we didn't have a colon here. So it's a proper arrow function and it works perfectly. Alright, and again you can use square brackets inside of here as well. So you can just use the square brackets inside of, and it's still going to work. It's all the same actually. So that's it for this particular tutorial. Actually, we haven't completely covered everything, but we will in the next tutorial that's going to follow up with this. We'll be looking at more methods of creating objects. We'll be looking at prototypes. We'll be looking at a little bit into classes to create our objects as well. All right, so we'll be looking at all of that. So I'll see you there, but please subscribe, like, and share this video if you like it, and please press on the bell button so you get notifications when I post new videos, because I'll be posting videos pretty much every day. I'll try to post every day, but it's at least going to be 5 days a week. Alright, so that's it for this particular tutorial. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.